Hey guys, PIEGUYRULZ here, and welcome back to another Square Theory. So, how do I come up with the ratings that I give to every episode of SpongeBob? I've talked a little bit about this in the past, but I thought it would be nice to do an entire Square Theory devoted to discussing my system of rating these episodes. So, the first thing I have to say, I guess, is that when trying to determine if an episode is good, meh, or scumbob, sometimes, not very often, especially in the middle seasons of SpongeBob, sometimes there's an episode that's just really good, or just really bad, or just really middle of the road, and it's just kind of easy to call it. I'll just come away from that episode feeling one thing or the other, and it'll just be easy to rate it that. Of course, I don't just, watch it once and then say, oh, well, I enjoyed that, good episode, and then call it a day. I do go back and watch every episode 3 times, not back to back to back. I watch every episode once, every episode twice, every episode 3 times. But basically, if I have a positive reaction all 3 times, then that's just a good episode. I don't really even have to think about it. Sometimes episodes are just like that. Similarly, there are episodes that are just so bad that it's just so easy to call them that. I don't need to break it down. I don't need to think about it. I could just say, wow, I had a bad time watching that. I didn't like it. And of course, then I have to go in and figure out why and discuss it for the review. But sometimes it's just easy. And similarly, middle of the road. Sometimes there are just episodes that just kind of just are that. There's nothing wrong with them, but they're not particularly funny. They're not really good stories. They're just okay. They're decent. So sometimes an episode will just speak out to me, and it'll just be pretty obvious exactly what rating it deserves. However, there are a lot of episodes, most of them in fact, that basically when I am done watching them, I'm kind of split on what side of the meh line they fall on. There'll be episodes that I think are split somewhere between good and meh, and episodes that I think are split between meh and scumbob. So, if I'm split, how exactly do I come up with the rating? The first thing I do is treat it scientifically. I look at parts of the episode. I define parts as good or bad or middle of the road. And in each one of those parts, I ask myself 2 questions. How strongly is that? How strongly is the good stuff good? How strongly is the bad stuff bad? And how strongly is the middle of the road stuff middle of the road? Where does the middle of the road stuff fall? Better or worse, or just, flat in the middle? I ask myself that, and I also ask myself, how long are each of these parts, right? Because if there's something that's really bad, like an obvious example is the toenail scene in House Fancy. Yes, that's pretty dang bad and hard to watch, but it only goes on for a few seconds. So although, it's not doing the episode any favors, I don't think it'd be right to condemn the entire episode for something that only happens in a few seconds time. So, I try to look at both the strength and the length of the goodness and the badness and the madness, and I try to kind of calculate it out and think about it like that, like, okay, well, this intro was really good, and the ending was really bad, and the middle part was meh, so I guess it calculates about to a meh. And then of course when I rewatch the episode with that kind of in my mind, sometimes I'll be like, yeah, you know what, this just feels right. It does feel like a meh episode after I've sat down and analyzed it. Or sometimes there'll be, I'll look at it and I'll start thinking, and I'll be like, wait, you know what? Yeah, a lot of this episode was just bad. Even though I like this one element, the element really isn't in that episode for that long. Or you'll have an example like the Two Faces of Squidward, where there's just this one thing that's just really awesome, and it goes on for not a long, long time, but takes up a little bit of the ending of the episode, and that just kind of blows everything out of the water. But sometimes that's not enough either. Sometimes I'm still just kind of split on exactly where it'll fall. So one of the things that I think about in addition to that is, how boring is the episode? Like, if it's on the line between meh and scumbob, typically if it's on the line, it's there because the episode isn't interesting. Like, if I feel like it's really frustrating, it'll typically just get a scumbob. But if it's on the line, it's kind of like on the line of boredom, because there's a certain level of boredom or just like dullness in the episode that's not terrible. It's just kind of like okay. Or maybe a part of the episode will be dull, but other parts of it will be exciting versus an episode that's just flat out boring from start to finish, which is SpongeBob. So I'll think about that. I'll think about like, well, did it hold my interest? How dull was it? How interesting was it? And that can help me decide sometimes on whether it's meh or SpongeBob. Another thing that I do that really helps me when I'm in a bind is I try to think about it like this. Would I rewatch this episode if I had a choice? Like, would I go back and watch this episode again? Would I watch it if it just so happened to be on TV? Or would I never want to watch it again? Because that's roughly how I categorize good men SpongeBob. A good episode is something I would watch again and again. Maybe not like a million times, but I would go back and watch every so often. A meh episode is something that I don't regret watching once. And if it was on TV, hey, sure, maybe I'd stick around and watch it, but it's not something that I'd necessarily really like seek out again and again. And a SpongeBob episode is just something I don't want to watch. So thinking about it in those terms, sometimes it's just kind of it can lead to the thought of just like, you know what? I don't really want to watch this episode again. It really wasn't good. And then okay, well there you go. Then it's a meh and not a good. And then ultimately, if I'm stuck, as I was a number of times in season 8, especially because a lot of that stuff just falls towards the middle. It's kind of on the line. Is it good? Is it meh? Is it meh? Is it SpongeBob? Basically, what I'll do is I'll just kind of take some time to think about it. I'll just really reflect on the episode, and I'll watch it a fourth time. I had to do that with a lot of season 8 episodes. I'll just reflect and really think, and sometimes when I spend a lot of time thinking about like, oh man, is it meh or is it SpongeBob or is it good or is it meh? Honestly, if I think about it for too long and I'm sitting there and I can't decide, I think that's kind of the answer. If I don't feel strongly enough that it should be good or should be SpongeBob, then yeah, it should probably fall into the meh category. That's kind of one of the things. It's just like, well, if I'm stuck on which way to go, the middle is probably the best place for it. And so that's ultimately things tend to draw a little bit more towards the middle than anywhere else if I'm like really, really split. And now to answer a question that I get a lot. Why do I only have 3 ratings in my rating system? Now, first of all, I came up with this rating system a few years ago. I don't really know exactly why I did it this way, but I did it this way, and I am happy with the way it is. If I could change it, I would not change it. In reviewing other shows, I might, but in terms of SpongeBob, I think that the 3 rating system is really good. I think that it fits it perfectly, and I have a number of reasons for this. First of all, I don't like to overcomplicate things. I have a hard enough time as it is trying to sort these episodes into the 3 categories that I've already given. If I gave it 2 more categories, or 3 more categories, or scaled it out of 10, or whatever, that's more time I have to decide, like, well, is it good? Is it just kind of like semi-good? Is it great? Is it fantastic? Like, trying to sort it into more specific boxes would just take even more time. More people are going to agree with me and be able to enjoy the video more because they feel like their opinion is being represented. There's absolutely nothing wrong with disagreeing with me, but if I were to make a rating system that was a lot more specific, that was like, oh, well, I think this is, a 6.8, or I think this episode is slightly above average, then there's the likelihood of people agreeing with me on that very, very, very specific position. It's a lot lower, and I just feel like the more people that I can kind of encompass with my opinion, the better. If you feel like you're being represented, even if you don't think an episode is quite as good as like I'm praising it to be, you can still kind of empathize with, oh yeah, it's a good episode. So I feel like keeping it more general does keep it a little bit more relatable. And a very, very important reason to me is that the 3 rating system gives me a bit of leeway. With this rating system, I have the option to say, a year or 2 down the road, if I want to re-review the episode, I can decide that, like, okay, so the episode is still good, but it's not quite as good as I once thought it was. Whereas if I had different ratings for like, good and like slightly above average, I'd have to change the rating. Whereas now I can still keep the rating as good, but I can also articulate that I think it is less good than when I once saw it. So I think the rating system, the way it is nice because it does give me a little bit of breathing room without having to change the rating. And similarly, when I come up with the ratings, I can be happy knowing, you know what, maybe someday in the future, I'll think that the episode is really, really good. And again, I can just leave the rating as good, but I can, explain it to you guys that, you know what, I think the episode's even better than I thought it was once. Or the SpongeBob episode isn't quite as bad as I thought it was. It gives me just that little bit of breathing room that I like, because I like not being super, super specific. Also, having the rating system the way it is means that there's going to be a little bit more surprise when I do the top fives and bottom fives, and when I do top tens and bottom tens later on down the road, once I'm caught up on whatever SpongeBob season is currently airing. It leaves a little bit more surprise than, okay, well, Pie Guy rated these 20 episodes awesome, or, fantastic, or amazing, so obviously those are going to be the ones in the top 10. Whereas, now when I do a top 10, if I were to do a top 10 episodes from season one or something, you might have an idea of like my top five because of what I did in the video, but you're not necessarily going to know what the other five I'm going to pick are, or whatever. I think it just leaves a little bit more surprise, and leaves me open with just more room in general to further specify in later videos. And for perhaps the most important reason of all, that I really, really like the 3 rating system, is because I'm not crazy about ratings in general. I think that the review is a lot more important than the rating. And a lot of times when I see people complaining about how I don't have, like, upper meh rating or lower meh rating or whatever, I think to myself, like, did they listen to the review? Because a lot of times I'll even say that. I'll say, like, okay, this is in the upper meh. And I like not having that as an official rating, because I don't have to call everything. I don't have to specify it that much if I don't feel comfortable. If I think the episode is meh, but I'm not sure whether it's like upper meh or lower meh or whatever, I can just say, all right, well, it's meh, and then again specify at a later date. So I think that I'm relatively clear in most of my reviews. I hopefully am, as to how I feel about an episode. If an episode is really good, you should hear me praising it in the video, in the actual review part, so that you don't need to know. And of course, like, yeah, maybe it would be nice to see at a glance, to just have some episodes labeled like, fantastic or something, but again, this is what the top 5 and bottom 5 are for. If you want to think about it that way, those episodes are the really good and the really bad episodes. And if you wanted to come up with like a 4th and 5th rating, like awesome and, just like mega SpongeBob or whatever, then those would be those, and you could come up with those in your head if that's what you really want to do. So yeah, so that's why I have the rating system the way I have it. I'm happy with it. Again, when it comes to other shows I'm going to review, there is definitely, I have some other ideas planned, but I am very happy with the way it is with SpongeBob, and I'm sorry, but that's not going to change in terms of how I rate SpongeBob. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you learned a little bit maybe about how I break things down and how I try to look at things from a pretty analytical point of view, and I try to really, put myself through the ringer, no pun intended, to come up with the rating that really does best fit the episode, in my opinion. I don't take ratings lightly. I don't, rate an episode all willy-nilly. I definitely do go all in for it, and that's why I do feel confident in saying that the ratings are probably never going to change. Again, I might wiggle up and down on, like, oh, it's really good, or oh, well, now I feel like it's not quite as good but still good. I might wiggle up and down, but I am pretty confident about where upon the 3 goals here, the 3 big wide goalposts, which one of them each episode fits into, and where in that might move up and down, but I'm happy with it. So I hope you learned something, and I don't know, maybe this could help you if you were interested in reviewing, and I'd be interested to hear how you guys come up with ratings for certain things, if you have any particular methods, or if you just kind of go with your gut feeling or whatnot. So yeah, with that, Pie Guy rules.